Oh, oof. I look terrible. So I think it's making some progress on features for the SmartKeyboard. I went ahead and just bit the bullet and got the Arduino Due, because, like, seriously, who doesn't need a 32-bit keyboard with 50 I/O? Gotta have all that I/O for your 48 key keyboard. I'm still thinking about that, redoing the matrix on my keyboard so that it's 7x7, so it uses 2 fewer pins and you get 1 extra key, at the expense of some, logic. Minor logic. But I mean, if you make it for easy AVR, it's just like, who cares? The graphical abstraction doesn't matter. Anyways, so I'm thinking about this Arduino Due, and I'm kind of starting my research on it, which is what I usually do. So I'd like research something and like, yeah, okay, make the purchase, and then immediately regret the purchase, and then investigate why, find out why it's really good, and then I buy it and I find out why it's really bad, usually while it's shipping to me, and then I realize that it's not actually that bad, and then I wind up somewhere in the middle. So if nothing else, the Arduino Due is future-proof. So it is the direction Arduino is going. It's the direction everything is going, really. Honestly, I would be more comfortable with like an 8-bit controller, and there's still going to be room for generating matrices and or sending the, like, scanning matrices with an Atmega 328 and just communicating via I2C or something like that. Just sending the data to an actual processor, which was something I was thinking of, so you don't have to break out the USB controls, because the chips are inexpensive. So the Due is going to cover like everything, and now I'm thinking about all the craziness I want to do with it. So I have a list, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to read that. I might just need to refresh it when I hit the stop sign here. I was reminded of the potential of having this web controlled, or at least a web interface. That way you can I talked about this before, having your keyboard plugged into a computer and using that computer to connect via Wi-Fi to your keyboard, and then programming your keyboard with your keyboard through a computer. Oh yeah, tracks the state of the OS. So tracking the state of the OS, probably using serial, would mean that you could have multiple line record and paste clipboards. You would have continuity across your OS, and you would maintain context with the computer you're interfacing with. So on Windows, I have no idea how to do something like that. I'm sure it's possible, but with a standardized interface like Serial or something, you can make the keyboard macros or shortcuts, or even the entire keyboard itself reprogram itself based on what program you're in at the moment. So if you were to, maybe you write code in QWERTY, but you write prose in Dvorak. So whenever you're in your Vim or your Emacs, the computer says that this is the active window and sends to the keyboard via serial interface currently in Vim, or it sends to it, you probably do the controlling on the computer, sends to it, switch to Dvorak, or switch to QWERTY, and then you flip out of that to respond to an email, and it detects that you're in Chrome or you're in, Outlook or something like that, and then the serial interface sends to the keyboard, switch to Dvorak. So that is a bit rather esoteric, but what isn't esoteric is setting up your macro keys. So if your macro keys work really well in Excel, and you set up all these macros for Excel, and you have these separate macro keys for that purpose, when you switch to your development environment, or you switch to Adobe Illustrator or something like that, the computer will detect that the active window has changed, and based on what that current active window is, send to the computer, switch these keys, perform this action. So those macro keys, those same macro keys that do one thing in your IDE, do a completely different thing in your Adobe Illustrator or in your Chrome or whatever. So that's pretty neat. The other thing was the next point was the live record. Live record is cool, but I don't think it's super fleshed out. When you have tons and tons of memory, it just it kind of throws a lot of money at the problem. Technically, throws a lot of resources at the problem, which is just fine. But to be able to do a live record with an adjustable playback speed, that's something that I really wanted to be able to do. Oh, the paste, the clipboard. So a long time ago, I had this program, it was probably for Windows XP, maybe Windows 2000, that had multiple clipboards, and you could maintain multiple clipboards and immediately flip between them using keystrokes. So you do a keystroke, and then it flips you to clipboard number 5. And then on clipboard number 5, you paste out whatever's contained in clipboard number 5. I found that super useful. I used something similar in hot text replace. I'm not sure what that's called in AutoHotkey. Might be getting sick. It is starting to cool down. AutoHotkey, oh yeah, it might be better for squirrel hunting. AutoHotkey lets you type in keywords, and I have like stuff when I'm in help desk doing tickets, links, like URLs that I type out frequently. I just have a list of those and shortcut keywords basically that I would type out. So UNI, CUST, FEE. If I type that into anything really, anywhere in the OS, AutoHotkey picks up that set of combination of characters and then erases them and then types in whatever or executes whatever command I tell it to do, which is to type out a canned text thing. It might make a lot more sense to use the clipboard function to dump it into a clipboard just so I can use a hotkey and then paste it, but I don't know. Either way, I found that being able to flip between clipboards is very useful and a feature that seems to be kind of lacking. So, yeah, it could be a macro, but it could also be a whole bunch of, you could make it press one button and type out your email, but you can make it press one button and type out an entire email, complete with line breaks and everything. And you would be able to change it so that it sends the key messages that you press, the keystrokes, at the speed that you recorded them at, or at high speed or adjustable speed. You can adjust something on it. Probably have to be some kind of dial to run it at 100% speed, or I guess it would have to be like 200% speed or 1,000% speed. All the way down to 100% speed, because the speed at which you type it in would be the speed at which it would replay at the lowest setting. But to be able to crank it up and reduce that wait time in between until it's almost nothing, or basically nothing, is nothing. The reason for that is if you interface with an OS using macros, you'll frequently find that the OS kind of has trouble keeping up with the keyboard commands. So Alt-Tab in particular, there's a few dozen milliseconds that take place between you holding Alt and hitting Tab and the actual window popping up. And when that happens, your keyboard macro doesn't care. Your keyboard just keeps going. That was like 20 seconds. That car just sat there for 20 seconds. And there's like 30 cars behind it. No one honked. amazing. It's still green. I'm surprised. And you're stopping again. Are you okay? Are you okay? But if you wanted to create a macro that included an Alt-Tab function, or really any interface with a browser, because that's nuts. That's made for human speeds, not maximum keyboard speeds. You have to write your own macro using the language, and like make this keystroke wait 100 milliseconds, and then do this, and wait 200 milliseconds, and then do this, and then you play it back, and if it fails, you start tweaking the settings and all that. But in this case, you'd be able to live record a macro that says, you know, do this, and then execute it at normal speed, at the speed at which you recorded it, which might be slow, and then you can adjust the dial and run it again, and adjust the dial and run it again, and get it as fast basically as you can, so that it runs at full speed. That's really cool. The live record, especially for me, makes things really easy, because if I have to do something, I'm really quick with the keyboard, so even if I have to do something often, it usually doesn't bother me enough to actually write a macro for it, a proper macro, if the live record doesn't work. So having the live record work and having lots of different memory spaces for the live record is good, definitely good. That's multiple live record. Yeah. Many programmable keys. Yeah, I remember that. Hotkeys, macros. We're like kind of moving. Just having all those, you know, instead of having 10 macro keys or 5 macro keys, and I'm talking about macros that are saved in the keyboard that you can replay using a key command, but I'm talking about an actual set of macro buttons that is dedicated for just those macros, and can flip between those. Also, for those keys, I don't think it would be very difficult to get those small OLED displays and to be able to name those keys, and then put those OLED displays next to the keys, like built into the frame, so that the OLEDs aren't on the key button itself, but they are next to the key button. So when you press the frame change, it updates on the screen. SD card reading and writing, possibly controlling the config through there. I'm not quite sure what all you would do with that. I do anticipate saving lots of data into the SD card. So being able to interface with that file and process it, and certainly like load macros and unload macros and stuff like that seems really cool. Being able to open that in a text editor and really make complex macros, that seems really useful, rather than interfacing with it directly on the keyboard. Man, it's like really bad today. Oh, this was really funny. I was thinking about setting this up. Also, the other thing was having the extensible I2C, which means you would be able to plug in basically daughter keyboards, and those daughter keyboards could be powered by the simple ATmega 328. Those inexpensive controllers. They can't do USB, but they can, pulse and sense the keyboard and send data over I2C. So they would be forwarding data along to the keyboard, to the main keyboard basically, for it to forward the output. So I wound up getting a spare Logitech M570 trackball, because I realized I really, really like it, and I've bought 2 so far. And I don't want it to go the way of the other trackballs where, you know, they just stop making them and then the price shoots up and then you can't get them and then you can't get parts. But I also wanted to see about integrating, how difficult it would be to integrate that trackball into a keyboard design, into a case. And it's actually, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that difficult. The whole frame itself, all of the electronics are housed in the bottom of the mouse itself, the trackball, so that'll make it you know, pretty low profile. And the ball area is actually, you know, it has kind of a captive area that the ball stays in, but it sits on an area that's a lot more open, so it can sense without that whole captive area being around it. At least I think it can. I found an inexpensive used one for 13 bucks that didn't have a receiver for it, and I have multiple receivers for it, obviously, at this point. So Logitech allows you to reprogram the unifying receiver to accept input from multiple Logitech devices, hence unifying. So I was like, okay, that's really cool. We can do that. You know, we'll just we'll manage our input that way. And then I can just move the unifying receiver around with my laptop, and then the trackball is wherever I sit. You know, multiple trackballs. So I was thinking about that unifying receiver, and I believe it has been hacked. Someone mentioned using it. They basically reverse engineered the protocol, which, like, good on them. I don't know if they're publishing it. I also don't know if that's proprietary, but either way. I was thinking about it, and I'm like, man, it would be really cool if you could make a dongle. And really, the best bet is probably just to have one of those NRF 5 whatever modules and attach that to a Pro Micro and just make that a dongle that you plug in and handles all the USB communication and sends keys and, you know, key down and key ups and all that. But if you could use a Logitech receiver, I'm like, well, we have all this input, right? Input and output on the Due or the Mega. The Mega has tons of I/O. What would be wrong with buying a Logitech keyboard, syncing it to the receiver, and then just like attaching to the pins, and then just setting them high or low based on whatever position you want to activate in the matrix, and letting that processor pulse and sense and then forward it on wirelessly. I'm just saying. I mean, you got all that I/O, like, why not? Why wouldn't you? So the potential of having like a Logitech keyboard, just logic card being your output device, and then sending it to the Logitech receiver, like, you're basically sending all you're sending is keystrokes, and the Arduino Due is what's deciding how to process those keystrokes. So the serial interface, now that would not work. That's confirmed, basically. You would not be able to do that. But yeah, I don't know. That seems pretty useful. I'm liking the idea of how I'm just kind of separating these bits out so that you make a keyboard brain that works really well, and then you decide what your output device is. You know, is it going to output via USB? Is it going to output by plugging in a Bluetooth module and then syncing to the Bluetooth and using that? Is it going to pulse and sense on a Dell? Why do I keep saying thinking Dell? On a Logitech control card that's powered by the Due and operated electronically, basically, by the Due. All of that's basically standard, you know, and it doesn't matter if you're switching layers or if you're executing if you're executing I guess you don't know when it fires, though. That's the question. You could probably figure out the timing for it, though. But even if you're executing a macro or whatever, it's all just output. You know, it's the same USB output. You're sending the same USB datagrams across. You're just sending keystrokes, keys and modifiers. So, like, why not? All doable and all doable. I am glad that I just bit the bullet and went for the Due, because now I'm thinking about how much speed I have to do lots of extra stuff, and how much how much I/O I have. Because the Mega was tempting, because it's, you know, I generally prefer the older hardware, especially for open source stuff. It's all, you know, it's been fleshed out. People have written libraries for it. You know, they've discovered weird problems with the libraries. They fixed them. Weirdos have gone in and like tweaked things so that you save a few nanoseconds on every process. Like, it's great. Having old code is great, especially old code that fits within the limits of a microcontroller. So it like necessarily requires that you be mindful of your resources and your speed and how much all of your functions really cost the microcontroller. So, but I think this is the right call on this one. And if you're going to complain that the keyboard's microcontroller is going to cost $48, then don't buy one. Have a nice day. Buy an $8 Dell keyboard. Fight with it. Let it break. Buy a new one after that. Throw it in the trash. I don't care. I'm trying to balance this somewhat, but I kind of don't care, really, because there's not 10 million people yelling at me, we need this, we need X, we need Y. I'm just kind of doing my own thing at this point, and people are taking interest, and that's fine, but it needs to be my own thing, or it's not. Well, obviously. It either is a thing, or it's not. Ta-da! I think I covered pretty much everything. Pro Trinket dongle, yeah. Adjusted time live macro playback. Some kind of JSON web interface. Yeah, that's weird. SD card is probably a better choice, though. Adjustable speed macros. Yeah. Yeah. And like, I don't worry about any of this stuff. Like, adding all these extra functions. The keyboard, it's gonna run at 84 megahertz, dude. Like, it's super overkill. Normally I hate overkill, but I think it's just right here. So let me know what you think. And again, let me know if you have interesting new ideas or things you would change or tweak. What you would want in a smart keyboard. I guess that's about it.